Good afternoon, everybody. This is George Weitengruber from Weitengruber Law, and I am happy to bring you another episode in the community chat series. This is season 2. As you remember, last year in this crazy bit of trying to recover our sanity, we started a podcast just to see what was going on in the community, how we were all adapting and adjusting to this crazy thing called COVID. And here we are, 12 months later, still doing the same crazy shit. And what I have to say is, you have to laugh or you're going to cry. And you're going to have moments where you cry too. But if you need laughter, I have brought you the perfect guest today because I am joined by Kathleen Hoffman, who is a comedic speaker, a storyteller, a coach, and a former clown. So if you'd like to clown around a little bit, let's talk to Kathleen. Kathleen, how are you? How have you been?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. And
Yeah, we all are.
I think that's it. Unfortunately, we have these moments where if we don't laugh, we're going to cry. And after we have a cry, I hope to balance that out with a good laugh every once in a while.
Yep.
How have you been dealing with COVID?
Well, it's just me and my kitties. I've kind of been taking my business to a different level. And since I can't physically interact with people or see people, I've been doing a lot of writing. Things that will eventually be recorded as videos. My experiences clowning and just different experiences I've had in my life, but a lot of stuff with the clowning because I met a lot of amazing people. I was in a lot of amazing situations, circumstances, funny, scary circumstances. So I've been doing a lot of writing. And those are going to show up on my YouTube channel once I get done recording them all.
I love that, and I point all of this out in that power of knowing your network and knowing who you're attached to, because I was doing another episode in this series and I looked into their LinkedIn connections with me, and you were one of the first ones that popped up. And we had encountered each other years before when you were working in another business. And I always thought we had lovely conversations. And I was just like, that is the kind of person I want to see what they're up to now and how they've adapted, adjusted, and where life has taken them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are now, what your background is? I know about the clowning, but I'd love to talk a lot about what you've done over the years because it is fascinating and so fun that I think people should know about it.
Great. Well, I think travel overarches everything in my life because I really enjoy traveling. I really enjoy different cultures and meeting people. I out of in my early career, and actually for longer than I care to say, was with the phone company. And I was there during the breakup, the famous breakup. Um, and it turned out that I had an aptitude for IT. Little did I know, but they were very good at finding those things out. And they sent me to programmer school. And it turns out I was good at it. So I started moving up the ranks. The problem was I never really liked it. I never really enjoyed it from the standpoint of a day-to-day sort of thing. And it does attract not detracting from anybody out there that's in IT, but the people that do it for a living in a lot of cases are more introverted, techie kind of. I remember a situation where I had a question about something I was working on, and I went down to the person's office to discuss it with them, and they were like, "Why are you here? Why didn't you just send me an email?" And I'm like, "Because you're 2 hours away from me. Why would I send you an email?" So it was not really my personality wasn't all that well suited for it. So what ended up happening was I went into a very nichey part of it, which was performance, where I was the person that had to figure out why something wasn't running as fast as it was supposed to, or what we had agreed it would. For that, it was like, solving puzzles. It was like going in and saying, this isn't working right, go figure it out. Turns out it was not a big field for women. And I would go to conferences, and I can always judge the popularity of a conference by how long you have to wait online for the ladies' room. And there weren't any lines because there weren't any women there. And I was actually in, one of the sessions, and I looked around the room, and there had to be 100 people in the room, and there were 2 women in the room. It was me and the person that was actually giving the session, which was really nice. She was from IBM. So it was a lonely world. I wasn't all that well suited for it. But in the meantime, the phone company, going back to the beginning, they were always very big on giving back to the community, and they had a community service organization called the Telephone Pioneers. And they would do things like, one of their big projects was they painted maps of the United States in playgrounds. They would organize these community painting parties where people would come and do that. And they also had clowns. They had telephone pioneer clowns. They had enough telephone pioneer clowns across the country, but I actually went to a convention one year of telephone pioneer clowns, and there had to be close to 500 of us that got together. So the thing was, they had these clowns. They would organize and train you. You had to get your own costume and your own makeup, things like that. But we would support them at other events they did, like parades and different community events that the company would have presence at. Runs, walks. They have some sort of big meet up in Bedminster every year with the carriages, and they were very involved in that because it was on their property that they would donate for this. So I started working in the clown troupe, and I really enjoyed it, and I really got into it, and it sort of like became that outlet for me to be my own, to let my personality out. When I couldn't do that at work, I could do it as a clown. And so I started seeking out professional training, going to seminars and workshops and clown camp. Yes, there is something called clown camp.
Yep.
And to get more adept at my skills. And I also, while I was doing that, my character, whose name is Molly Cuddles, she sort of built herself. And she became sort of like she was me as a kid, but as a clown. She took on a lot of my personality traits. It was like my inner child manifesting again. And she's about 5 or 6 years old. She gets in trouble a lot. She's very bossy. She's in trouble identifying animals. She gets them mixed up all the time. But I created this character, which includes creating your look, your face. Clowns, believe it or not, they're like branded, just like businesses are. They, clowns wear certain colors. They, you never see them, usually don't see them changing their wigs or their makeup. They have a specific look. So I got into all of that, and I got trained by professionals, and I worked with professionals, and I even got to perform with some of the professionals at Clown Camp, which was awesome. So what ended up happening was one of the people in my clown troupe ended up reading about Dr. Patch Adams and the fact that he took a group of clowns to Russia every year. And the funny thing is that she ended up not going. I ended up connecting with Patch. Patch is a letter writer. He's not big on the phone. He likes to write letters, and he writes big, long, beautiful letters. I still have most of the letters that he sent me, because he's very careful about who he chooses to bring on these clown trips. He needs people that are going to be self-sufficient and that are going to work really hard and not complain. So I was accepted. There was another guy from my clown troupe that was accepted, and I ended up going to Russia with Patch 3 times. Each time we spent a week in Moscow, a week in St. Petersburg. And then the 3rd trip, we actually ended up going to Bosnia. And it was not all that long after the war. The airport still wasn't open. We had to bus in to Bosnia in our clown clothes, which was interesting.
So Kathleen, I'm going to back up for a second,
okay.
Right? Because I think you and I date ourselves a little bit. For those of a newer generation who didn't see the Robin Williams movie, have no idea who Patch Adams is. But an absolute wonderful movie that I have no idea if it's a fair depiction or not. It feels like it from a feel-good perspective. Why don't you tell the world who Patch Adams is in case they live under a rock and didn't see a movie from 25 years ago?
Okay, well, oh, don't say that. Patch is a real doctor who the best way to describe it is like a hippie doctor, because that's the era that he grew up in. And he came up with this idea of making healthcare available to everyone. He founded something called the Gesundheit Institute, and he wrote a book about it. And the book became very famous. There were a lot of people in the medical world that did not like it because of his methods and means, the idea of giving away healthcare. He had a piece of land in West Virginia, called the Gesundheit, that was, the Gesundheit Institute. And he had a totally different approach to healthcare, but along the way, he found clowning. He found his clown character, and he found it as a way to get closer to people. And that is the way that he used it. Now, the interesting thing about Patch's clown is Patch's clown doesn't really have a name. He's just kind of like the duck guy, because he wears this duck on his head, and he's nonverbal, which is very interesting because it doesn't matter where you are language-wise, because his character is nonverbal. But that's always what he's been. He's always been about bringing healthcare to the masses. He also is very big on, most of the people that are watching this probably won't remember. I was a very small child. We used to have house calls. Our doctor would come to the house. This was when I was really little. I was, in kindergarten or something. And Patch believed that that was part of it, because he felt that doctors needed to know your environment and what your life was like in order to treat you properly. So Patch's book, the Gesundheit book, is really, really interesting. And that's when somewhere along the line, he came up with this idea of going to Russia and taking clowns over there and having them work over there, a week in Moscow, a week in St. Petersburg, and it got to be a tradition. I'm sorry to say, I don't know if he's still doing it or if he's going. I think the clowns are still going. I'm not sure if he's going with them anymore, because he's kind of gotten up there age-wise. But it's quite an amazing experience, because the Russians are very generous. They love clowns. They revere clowns. And they would let us in just about anywhere there. And we got the most interesting reactions. Having been a kid growing up in the Cold War, going to Russia was very eye-opening for me, very emotional.
They confirming that they in fact did a virtual clown tour November 12th and 15th for Russia with the Patch Adams Gesundheit Institute. So they have kept it alive even in the chaos and insanity that is COVID, raising an insane amount of money over the years. And I'm looking at a picture of Patch, which I'm sure for the virtual, it appears he was there. This is it looks like a pretty recent picture. We go back to that old colloquialism, laughter is the best medicine. Being able to have an approachability, clowns make it easier, or at least clowns made it easier for a long time. And we'll talk about the clowns making it easier to approach and open people up before we get into the clowns now scare the bejesus out of us. Let's talk the good stuff, the weird stuff. Tell me about your experience on those Russia trips, because clowns are looked at in a completely different way there than they are here. You've told me some cool stories about that.
Yeah, and also the Russian people are very open to it too. They call them the November clowns, or the Klonsky Americano, or the American clowns. So they actually look forward to it. And the circus is big there. The clowns are, man, their skills are crazy. We got to go to one of their training centers, and the stuff that they were juggling and the stuff they were doing was just massively amazing. So the people were so receptive to us. And then also, I don't know if this is still the case, but they were very generous with us as far as when we would go into one of the hospitals, they would pretty much give us free reign. They would let us, walk around, walk in any rooms we wanted to, whereas in the US, you have to go through a training program and you need to check with the nurses station and you need to, ask permission to do everything. Over there, they were just like, whatever. And I remember this one time, I may have told you this story where we went into a room and there were 4 little boys, and one of the little boys had his covers pulled up all the way. And by the time we left, we were playing with him. By the time we left, he was jumping up and down on his bed, and his little pajama bottoms kept falling down, and we kept, pulling them back up and tying them, and 2 seconds later they would come down again. And the nurse walked in and she started crying, and we were like, what? We got somebody to translate. And she said this kid hadn't like moved out of the bed in like a week.
Wow.
And, here he was laughing, he was smiling, he was jumping up and down. And the kids, we would bring like little trinkets from like Oriental Trading, and you would think that we were giving them gold bracelets and coins. And every time you gave somebody something, the kids wanted to give you something of theirs. Which is a lot different than American kids, I will say. The kids were just so generous and so happy to see the clowns. And in the hospitals, because they were sick, in the orphanages, because they were, the orphanages were very dismal back then. Things have gotten a little better, but, they didn't get that kind of entertainment in the orphanages. And the orphanages are organized by age and by mental ability. So the kids that show any kind of defect get pushed off to a lower grade. I mean, even if it's like maybe they're dyslexic or they may be slightly autistic. We actually found one of the kids that we ended up sort of rescuing had CP. He had cerebral palsy.
Right.
And the doctors that were with us were able to diagnose that and say there's nothing wrong with this kid. He has a physical issue, but he mentally is very sharp. So they didn't have the time for that sort of thing, to do that kind of diagnosis.
No, and I think that was kind of a dismal age when it came to the Russian and USSR adoption programs. It was rampant with issues of neglect and feeling that autism was really just flying out of there because of the lack of compassion and connection. There was a really rough reputation for that for quite a long time that I think has ironed itself out in the last 15 years.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, Putin had stopped American adoptions because of the sanctions.
Sure. Right.
And I do know some people, like one of the women the woman that was our tour guide in Moscow, all 3 years I was there, she was so moved by what she saw with Patch that she started volunteering to help American couples that needed translators for adoptions. But there was one trip that I made there were a few trips I made without Patch, but there was one where we went in the summertime, and we went with Maria's Children, which is this other charity that I've worked with. And we went to a baby house, which is infants, 0 to 6 months old at this particular baby house. And it was just amazing because you go in a room of cribs, maybe 25 cribs, and the kids got changed maybe once a day.
Oh, wow.
And they were in swaddling clothes. And I found that out very quickly when I went to pick one up, and that t-shirt had to be burned later. But we brought diapers and things with us, and we bathed a lot of the kids. We put diapers on them. But like I had like a 5 or 6 month old kid that couldn't sit up. I had to hold her up because they didn't get handled by humans. It was very sad. And it wasn't for the lack of trying for the people that worked there. It was just that there were so many of them. And they had these like giant cribs that looked like they were like giant playpens that there maybe be 10, 15 kids in.
Wow.
When they got a little bit older so that they could move around, but still there was no, they didn't get the kind of contact that they needed to develop. And so the lucky ones got adopted, but they were behind already, from a educational and from a motor skill standpoint.
Right.
Um, People had to realize that when they were adopting babies there. So it was really very sad. And also with the fall of the Soviet Union, what ended up happening was that some of these kids, because they divvied stuff up, would have been entitled to apartments, and their parents like dumped them in orphanages so they could take the apartment. There was stuff like that going on. So it was very eye-opening. It was also eye-opening to hear, as I said, having grown up in the Cold War, well, the end of it. I'm not going to make myself that old, but when we would, those times where we were just sort of hanging out. I remember this one night we were drinking beer, pivo, and we were all telling stories, and the Russians were talking about this song that they had to sing every morning, the Soviet song, and they were singing it and they were laughing, and we were all falling over laughing. And, they were laughing about us climbing under desks. And although I have to say that was before my time too, the area drills where people went under desks and
Right.
things like that. But basically what we found is that we were all being lied to by our governments, that they were not telling us the truth. They were pointing fingers at both sides. So it turned out a lot of it wasn't true, and we ended up making incredible friends over there, with these people that were supposedly pointing bombs at us all the time. So gives you a whole different outlook on life when you start hanging out with people in another country and hearing, what they've gone through, especially the Russians. They've had so much pain. They've been dominated for so many years. They've had totalitarian governments, and it's just awful.
It's so interesting, and that's why you never absolutely have a clue where your conversations will go when you do one of these. But I had done a podcast with Senator Vin Gopal, and Vin's best piece of advice was stop watching the news networks, because they're based on ratings and they're based on entertainment. So they've turned our system of government into something where they want conflict. They want radical opposing viewpoints to be out there. But somewhere in the middle of that, the people that can look across the aisle and communicate effectively with quote unquote their enemy are the relationship builders, are the people that get us there. So doing a goodwill tour at a point where it was still a lot of conflict. I mean, that's 95. That's post USSR breakup, I think, from a dating perspective. But it still was in kind of its infancy in its new form as Russia. So a lot of that, now it seems to be there yet again. It's amazing when you can color your life with those different perspectives.
Yeah. Oops. Sound wacky there for a minute. Even something as you would think as mundane as McDonald's. Over there, it's funny. There's a joke with the Russians because they said they can always tell the Americans when they're at McDonald's because they clean up after themselves. Because the Russians just leave everything there. It's because with the prices they're paying, it's like eating out at a restaurant. So, and we learned to bring our own ketchup too because they charge you for ketchup. But just even, in other places too, I mentioned that we went to Bosnia in '97. That was all very interesting because we did spend some nights with families. I spent a night with a Muslim family who made this stew that had one piece of meat in it, and they put the piece of meat on my plate, which
Right.
pretty much told me they had told us ahead of time, don't, they're going to give you the best of what they have and don't make a big deal, thank them, but don't say, oh, no, I have to share this because they're honoring you as a guest. But they didn't even have running water. They had big barrels that they would put the hose in, and they would turn the water on like twice a day, and the barrel would catch the water. They didn't have electricity around the clock, things like that, but they gave us the best of everything. And I remember being in the old part of town, which is the Muslim part of town, and we were just walking. We weren't even in our clown clothes, but I think we still kind of screamed American. And this old man just invited us into his shop, and he gave us some sort of some sort of concoction. He makes some sort of liqueur. He shared with us and as a toast, and we all were kind of like, whoa, it was like, swallowing. It might as well have been on fire. But here was this man that was just like invited us in, and he spoke English, and he was so excited to have somebody to speak English with. And it's really just opened my eyes up to the fact that a lot of the trouble in the world is governments, not the people.
Yep. I couldn't agree more that there is a profit to be made by keeping us at each other's throats.
Mm.
And to take a rational view and to find the middle ground would probably make life easier for a lot of people at the expense of a lot of rich people. But a very hard view to break into somebody when we sit here with a general view of, well, this is mine, and therefore I'm going to fight for it as long and hard as I can, instead of this is ours. And collectively, this is ours tends to get us further faster.
Yeah, I think that's a really good assessment. Unfortunately, and I'm just I feel very blessed that I was able to being with Patch and the traveling that I did with him, that we got to meet and spend time with real people, and real people that lived there. It wasn't the touristy view at all.
Right.
People that went to other people I know that went to St. Petersburg had a completely different experience, than I had when I was there. And if you'll allow me one kind of funny story that sticks out in my head, we, there are some in St. Petersburg. There's the Neva River that goes to the center of it, and then there's a number of islands that are actually part of the city, and one of them is called Vasilevsky Island, and it was home to some people that invited us for a big party. And oh my God, we just sang and ate and sang and drank, and it was just this great night, until somebody realized what time it was, because what happens, St. Petersburg is a seaport, so at midnight all the bridges go up so that the ships can come in. And we were separated. We were on Vasilevsky Island, which was not where our hotel was. So here we are at like 5 to 12 running through running across Vasilevsky Island. I was wearing my clown shoes, which were giant pink Mary Janes. And Patch had his clown shoes on, and we're running across, and we get to the bridge, and the bridge is still down. We were all like, had this sigh of relief, but it was beautiful. It was snowing. And the guys that were in charge of the bridge saw us, so they let us run over the bridge so that we got to the other side before they opened the bridge. But those are the kind of memories that I cherish, of just having this wonderful fun night that couldn't have happened anywhere else but St. Petersburg. Because I don't know, maybe there were other cities that pick their bridges up at night, but that was something that I had never heard of before. So it all turned out well. We didn't have to sleep on the street or anything, because we didn't get across the bridge. But
I'm sure people would have kept you company all night.
Well, we could have gone back to Dima and Masha's probably and slept on the floor there. They were, well, he was an actor, so he had a very nice apartment there, much larger than most people did, because they treated their artists pretty well. And he had that back from the Soviet era. So, but still, it was just a funny seeing us running in our clown shoes and trying to get across this bridge, and the snow coming down. It was a really fun night. So I can say that now because we made it. Things are always better if when they turn out well. So
it absolutely not exactly similar whatsoever, because it was a very different country. But I proposed to my wife in Scotland back in 2004, 2004, I believe. And we got lost at Loch Ness. We went south instead of north, and going around that loch was an extra 40 kilometers out of the way. And we were on our way across late at night, on our way to the Isle of Skye, where we were staying at a youth hostel because we were still broke, just out of college kids. And we called because we knew we were running late. And the hostel manager said, there's this bar right on the edge of town. Here's where it is. Just meet me there and I'll have the key. And terrifying drive, because we were almost out of gas, and it was late at night, and all these things that you're used to as an American suddenly are not that way in other countries. But when we got eventually to where the bar is, we walked in on a wedding. And that was one of those common things where people, for a wedding, everybody in town would come out. So basically he invited us to sit down and have some drinks at somebody's wedding. We got to be wedding crashers in Scotland. And the next day is when I proposed to my wife, and she had no idea it was coming. So that was kind of fun and weird. But I think that you're pointing into an experience that most of us don't have. When you go to the postcard locations, when you travel, it's just a different version of Americanism. It's just a tourist trap, unless you can actually sit somewhere and give it a week, give it a month in living the culture of the people you're around. It feels like you got a glimpse of that.
Yes. And especially at that time, it was still kind of rare for Russian. You couldn't even enter Russia without an invitation.
Right.
I don't know if that's still true, but even the times I went over in the summer with my friends, we would get an official invite from, my friend Maria and her charity, to get us in, but they didn't just let you show up in Russia. But I know they do have tours and things there. I don't know how I feel about going there now, but it wasn't, you couldn't just pop in there. But the fact that, that was part of the deal with Patches, he wanted us to all have a local experience. He made it a point to make friends with real people that lived there, and that, you would get invited to different people's houses for real meals. And the only thing that they told us was, whatever you do, don't say that you like anything, because they'll try to give it to you.
Right.
Don't say, oh, that's a really pretty lacquer box. And, they'll say, oh, here you go. Let me wrap it up for you.
Right.
So they're just amazingly generous. But I have to say, one time I did get into trouble for hanging out with the locals, was in Bosnia. These little kids, they were like three of them. I don't know, they were maybe about 10. They kidnapped me and they took me to their school. And we walked across a field to get there.
Oh.
And yeah. I got in big trouble for that later on, because there were still a lot of active landmines in that area. And also, I thought somebody had seen me go. I thought there were other people following me, but they didn't. So I ended up with this class that they were like, look what we caught. We found a clown and we brought her here. They were just so proud of themselves, these kids. But afterwards, I realized that it had been very, very dangerous, because they had warned us ahead of time not to walk anywhere that wasn't paved. Because even, how, I don't even know what you call those, the spots, the grass that's between the sidewalk and the street.
Yep.
There were places in Sarajevo where they had buried landmines and places like that. So they pretty much said, don't walk on anything that's not paved.
Wow.
But I have to say, I had a lot of fun with these kids until I got caught and got yelled at.
It's okay. Getting yelled at is okay. That's part of it.
Yeah, I don't know if I do it again. I'd probably do it again.
Wait, you might. And that, again, it points to, we grew up in a very different world, a very soft, coddleish kind of environment, where it's easy to be a deer in the headlights, a babe in the woods, going, oh, life is easy, and we have it a lot better than most, and sometimes forget that.
That is very, very true, especially seeing Sarajevo, um, and seeing and the kids we met there were so amazing. They were amazing. They had grown up in basements. That because people were down in their basements and they didn't come out. Because in this one building we were in, the kids were showing me, oh, that's where the tank was over there that was pointed at our building. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. It's like, yeah, it's like, what do you mean? Well, there was this tank that used to sit there, it was pointed right at us. And, they all wanted to perform for us. They were all doing Spice Girl routines it was hysterical. But they were just like, well, this is it. This is what we had. And they made the best of it. And the kids there and the people there, they were just amazing.
There's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
The resiliency of kids, I think we often forget, right? Rewind 12 months, and my kids are 5 and 7, and you sit there and you go, oh my God, the horror of having to go to school on a computer. Oh my God, looking at a screen for that long. Well, we're prejudicing that view based on how we grew up and what we saw, and the adaptability of a kid is they don't know any better. So if you told a child 12 months ago today that they had to wear a mask everywhere they went, you're like, you're crazy. But my kids every morning in their routine, they know it's all right, put on my jacket, put on my mask, put on my hat, put on my gloves, go to school. And they don't think twice. And that's because this is what they've been put in. And I don't know if that's sad or if that just points to the fact that throwing obstacles at kids is a heck of a lot easier than throwing obstacles at adults that have preconceived notions of what's right, what's wrong, what we should be entitled to, and what reality looks like.
Yeah, the entitlement thing is big. Um, the idea of entitlement that many people have, when you go and you see people that don't have, and it really opens your eyes. I mean, I remember like I said, we had to go into Sarajevo by bus, and we had to wait in the mountains for a really long time because they had blown up the bridge that would take us into Sarajevo, and the Army Corps of Engineers had put installed a temporary bridge, but you could only go one direction at a time. So they would let like a half an hour, they would go one way and then they would shut it down, and we had to wait our turn to cross the bridge.
Yeah.
Then it was like, well, nature was calling. We've been on the bus a long time, and the bus driver was like, you got to go in front of the bus on the pavement in the headlights. So there went any kind of false pride. It was like,
modesty disappears.
I gotta go. So I guess I'm gonna squat in front of the bus. And he wasn't a pervert. He was just trying to keep us safe. So
right.
You can't go out in the woods.
No, there might be a landmine.
I don't know what's around here. So you got to go on the pavement in front of the bus. So when you have to, you don't have a choice to deal with some of those things, then you realize that people live through that every day. Those kinds of things that we've become so immune to, with the luxury of our lives, which it really is compared to what other people in the world have.
So I think that is a lovely spot to pivot and talk about how you've taken this worldview perspective and your life as a clown, and clearly a deep fundamental background of volunteerism. What are you doing now?
Well, as I said, I'm doing a lot of writing now of the stories, the encounters I had, and turning them into stories with points, to use, because the direction I'm going in right now is as a professional speaker, and right now I'm also an infinite possibilities coach. In fact, I'm having a class on March 6th. In Infinite Possibilities, which is Mike Dooley's Thoughts Become Things, So Choose the Good Ones class. but that is really what I really want to go out and tell stories that inspire people, based on the experiences that I've had, and to try to use stories to make points about life. And I just a quick one to illustrate the point. The second time I was in Moscow, um, we got off the bus at an orphanage, just like we did, 4 or 5 times a day. And I heard somebody calling my name, my clown name. And it was a girl. She was, and because the kids in Russia call me Morley, Morley. That's what they call patch, pitch. So I heard this girl, she was screaming my name, Morley, Morley. And she came running towards me, and she wrapped her arms around me, gave me this great big hug. And then she gave me an apple. And I kept thinking to myself, where did this kid get this apple? Because they
Right.
just didn't get fresh fruit in the orphanage. So however she got it, she guarded it and she saved it for me. And the fact is, I did not remember this kid at all because, I met hundreds of kids when I had been there the year before. I didn't remember her, but she remembered me and she was waiting for me. And I never forgot her again after that. I did see her a number of times after that, and actually made sure she was okay in a couple of situations. But the fact that you never know the impact that you're making on somebody's life and how you may have changed somebody's life just by some little thing that you did. And it may not have been a big deal to you, but to somebody else, it could have been the whole world. So I like to think about that, as, something good that I did, and to get that point across to people that kindness, um, is important, and that you can really change somebody's life without even knowing it, just by how you treat them. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to talk about and write about, and hopefully do a TED talk about.
I mean, I think it's amazing. And I think we absolutely overlook that stuff all the time. Like, I come from a long background of volunteerism, of giving back and pushing that message out there. And we don't necessarily get to reflect in the immediate of, is this a quick hit project with little impact, like quick impact right now, but no lasting effect? Or is this something that is absolutely changing the course of people's lives? And I'm sitting here right now, I'm procrastinating on a project that I've given away a college scholarship for the last, I think, 8 or 9 years. And it's not a lot of money. It's basically, I have a matching fund with Kiwanis. The Kiwanis Foundation throws some money at it. I throw money at it every year. And I have 12 college students that put in these essays as to why they should receive $1,000. Again, not a hell of a lot of money, but I read these essays, and on their spring break, one of these people set up like a vaccination station. Somebody else set up like permanent water filtration systems in an unimproved village. And you're just like, what the hell did I do on my spring break? And I'm telling my father this last night, and he's like, you did tequila shots. And when I think about what these college students are doing today versus what we were doing 2 generations ago, it is amazing what people can do if they're not told they can't, and how they can push through to make powerful change just with force of will and a little bit of persistence.
Mhm.
um, that it's, I mean, that spirit of volunteerism, I think, is amazing.
Definitely. And my parents were very big in it from the time we were little. My father was a Marine. He was in the Marine Corps Reserve. He used to do Toys for Tots every year. And back in the old days, they used to actually, they didn't buy all brand new stuff. They would actually fix bicycles and toys for kids. And we were sent in every year to choose a number of things that we were going to donate to,
Yep.
out of our own collection. So my father, to literally to the day he died, the day that he died, he was scheduled to go to a soup kitchen. they used to cook at a soup kitchen once a month, the Marine Corps reserve that he belonged to. And that was his day to go and cook lunch at this soup kitchen near the villages. So, it was something that was ingrained in us by my parents as well. And I think it's really important for parents to do that and to teach their kids empathy.
Yeah,
Um, Empathy is huge.
it
Um,
it's a massive thing, and the earlier it gets ingrained, the more it just becomes routine instead of a chore. And I, I founded a Kiwanis club 13 years ago, 12 or 13 years ago at this point, and my kids at 7 and 5 have been on plenty of projects. They've belly ached on some of those projects, but there are other times where they were just huge. And I have a great picture. We do a sock drive every year associated with Halloween, where we had a Halloween parade in town. And this year, because of COVID, it got canceled. But we did a contactless drive-through Halloween parade this year, where we had done bags of candy that we could toss into people's car, and they could toss us the socks. We got, I think, 1,200 pairs of socks. I might even be short on that. 1,200 pairs of socks just by them driving up to the firehouse. And my favorite picture of it is my 7-year-old lugging like this giant box of socks back to the trunk. And you're just like, he gets it. He's
yeah.
at that age now where he knows this is what we do, because there are people that don't have as well as we do. And I got that same thing from my mother, who just passed from COVID, unfortunately. But my mother, the charitable stuff she did over her life was just crazy. And one of those last pieces was every year during Passover and during Thanksgiving, we prepared meals for homebound seniors in Howell. And there were about 150 or so meals that were prepared every year for those two events. That got derailed because of COVID, because they were so concerned about contact with the seniors that they more or less shelved the project. But I had taken that project and I had moved it to Bordentown, where we serve 400 people, like kids in schools whose family are living in motels that don't even have real kitchens or fridges, people that were at the military bases that were working on the holidays so they could have a meal, all of these different groups. And we figured out how to keep that project alive. So we did it during Christmas. We didn't have a problem figuring out how to get those meals out to people in a safe, contactless way still, where everybody had a station. We were in a gym and we had like 100-foot conveyor belt line where nobody had to be in proximity to the next person over. And we still churned out 400 meals. The weird point of my story is, my mother, who started this as a project where she was making 10 or 15 meals, I'm now up to 400 twice a year, just because other people bought in on those same projects. And here we are, she passes away, and our natural instinct when somebody dies is comfort. So the overwhelming amount of food that not only hit our house, but hit my sister's house, hit my father's house. Nobody's sitting Shiva. Nobody's coming together to mourn as a group. So we have triple the food that we normally have. Small households. I called the priest, the pastor at my local church, and I said, hey, I need a favor. I have too much food. Can you prep meals for me and send it out to the same people we do on our normal list? And he says, I'll be there in 10 minutes. So here she is, even in death. My mother figured out how to keep feeding people and doing something that she'd been doing for the last 20 years. That's the legacy. That's the carried on message, that if you are philanthropic, if you do take 10 minutes to not be totally about yourself and entitled, you can make impact that'll last generations.
That's the truth.
So yeah,
Service and empathy.
service and empathy.
Kids. Things kids teach your kids to make them better people.
That's
And I
right.
was lucky that my parents did that with me. So, and my brother, both of us have been involved with things like that all our lives. So um, it's good to look back on. My father left a legacy of volunteerism behind him. Um, so I'm very proud of that.
Me too. You are heavily involved still with the National Arthritis Association.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about that a little?
Sure. So actually, this is our advocacy week. So I just joined recently, but we spend a week every year learning about the issues that we're going to ask for from Congress. They do a week of training, which we're right in the middle of. And then next week we'll be meeting with legislatures. Next week I will be with a group that will meet with Senator Menendez and Booker's staffs. And then also I'm in Frank Flone's congressional district. So we'll be meeting with his folks to tell them what our asks are. I've had rheumatoid arthritis. I don't even know how long I've had it. I've been diagnosed since 2008. It's a devastating disease. I'm very lucky that I'm on a medication that works for me. I'm very lucky that I have found ways or people that will pay for it for me, because our medication, the medication I take is about $4,500 a month.
Wow.
So if I had to pay that all out of pocket, would have been crazy. And that's some of the issues that we're fighting for. There's 54 million Americans that have arthritis, and it's the #1 cause of disability in the United States. There's more money lost productivity-wise to arthritis than anything else. It affects 1 in 3 veterans. And then also children get arthritis too. There's many, do I have my numbers here? Because I was just, it's like, there are only, the pediatric rheumatologists in this country to treat the children that have rheumatoid arthritis, it equals out to 700 patients per doctor.
Wow.
So that's this year, the theme is 54 and 54. It's 54 million Americans, and we're trying to raise $54 million. I'll be doing the virtual walk in May. Normally we would have had a walk here in the Jersey Shore, but everything is still virtual. Hopefully by next year we'll be back. But currently our funding is through, at the national level, is through the CDC, and obviously the CDC's big priority now is COVID. But we are trying to move our legislators to increase the amount of funding for arthritis from that CDC budget, because it's been stagnant for the last 7 or 8 years. We only see about $10 million of funding out of there, so the rest of it all has to be raised by volunteers. So I'm just so excited to be doing something positive, for something that's impacted my life so much. I've had 8 surgeries due to rheumatoid arthritis. People have this idea that it's like the old lady, oh, well, my grandma has that. Well, yeah, she does, but she doesn't have the kind of arthritis that I have. And it affects different people in different ways. I've had times where I couldn't chew because it was in my jaw. Oof. And I couldn't actually get my teeth to meet. I couldn't chew. So it's random. It hits different people in different ways. It can also affect your organs. It can affect your heart. It can affect your lungs. It's a devastating series of diseases. And so hopefully we're going to be able to get through to our legislators. And it just feels good to be doing something about it. And it's also cool to say, oh, I have a meeting with Senator Booker's crew next week.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I talked to Senator Gopal a couple of weeks ago, just because, he was kind enough to give me some time. And you're like, oh, Governor Murphy called me just to chit chat about COVID and how it impacted my family. Those are fun name drops, but the value of what you can do with a few minutes with those people, if you go in prepared and you have an appropriate agenda, is wonderful.
And that's part of what they're teaching us this week, especially. I've done some advocacy. I've testified before the New Jersey State Senate about step therapy, which is a horrible, horrible thing, where an insurance company thinks they know better than your own doctor as to what medication you should be on. and telling you that you have to take, they call it fail first.
Right. I'm going
Take
through it with my
medicine.
son right now.
Okay. Yeah, take the medicine we think you should take, and once you are totally miserable and can't live, without it anymore, we'll let you take the other one. I'm oversimplifying, but so they are actually treating us on how to get in there and make our points quickly, and you make the best use of our time. But the biggest thing is to tell them our stories and to say, myself, I've had 8 surgeries. I've had 3 fingers so far that I had to have operated on, and I have a 4th one that's needs it. Eventually, probably all 10 of my fingers will have to be operated on to release the tendons in them due to inflammation. So it's all a matter of education and getting in there and learning how to make the best of the time we get with those people. So
Absolutely.
I'm
Because
enjoying it.
their time is tight and precious. So we try to
Yeah.
get it right.
Yeah.
And Ben, back to what you had referenced before, you are also a certified coach and you've got an upcoming seminar. I'd love to highlight that for you. Tell us what that's about and why you're doing it.
Well, I'm doing the class that's called Infinite Possibilities, the Art of Changing Your Life, which is something that Mike Dooley from The Secret created. It's about the law of attraction. It's about thinking about things you want instead of what you don't want. But the biggest thing is teaching you, and we all know how to do this, but we forget about it, and it's to live deliberately. It's not to float down the river. It's to do the backstroke down the river or the breaststroke, or that you're putting an effort into what you're doing and you're not just letting things happen to you. And that's really what the course is all about. This first course that I'm delivering is going to be in a 1-day, 6-hour course, which get beautiful, suitable for framing certificate signed by me, your instructor, because I actually learned I had to attend training with Mike to get certified. So I actually learned from him how to teach this class. So this is the first time I'm going to be doing it virtually. I hope it'll be as much fun. Be doing it on Zoom, so it'll be interactive. And it's, there's nothing not fun about this class. It does force you to kind of look internally. And, I hate some of the overused, your inner beliefs and your limiting beliefs and, some of the terms that have been overused in the law of attraction. There's some of that stuff, but it's in a fun way to free you up, to make you enjoy life more, and to, as I said, live deliberately instead of being pulled along, getting sucked out in the riptide. It's a horrible way to put it, but that's what
but it makes absolute sense, is that we can either let things happen to us or we can try to make things happen. And I feel in the last year, so many people have been stuck. And that's fair. Like, circumstances have changed, jobs have changed. You're forced to stay at home with your children while they go to a virtual school. Your company may have shut down. A mass society. There's so many things that are off, that some people allow themselves to be victims, and other people figure out, this is new, this is the environment, I can cry about it, or I can sort out how to work within this new environment. And I'll say I've been both. I've had months where I'm just like, I'm not adulting today. I'm sorry, I'm not adulting this month. But then you wake up one day and realize that if you elect to be a victim, you're going to start falling behind.
And there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people that have. I missed my good mic right now. There are a lot of people that have thrived in this environment, and I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see this family over in England. It's 2 boys and 2 girls, and the mom and dad, incredibly talented. And they take songs and they change the words and they make them about the lockdown, and they are hilarious. People are calling them like the English Von Trapp family. They've just become this sensation on YouTube. And they did one on Total Eclipse of the Heart. I can't remember what the COVID version was, but the kids have magnificent voices. and they're really super talented. But that's what they've decided to do as a family. They're making these little videos of these songs, and they're incredible. And then there were other people that have actually turned into millionaires because they found ways to, I don't want to say exploit, but turn the they found niches. I have to say niche because I'm working with a coach in the UK, and they laugh when I say niche. They're like niche,
Match.
niche. But people have found, ways to make money. I wish I was one of them. I am doing my virtual course, so hopefully we'll see how that goes. By the way, you can find it on Facebook. It's Speaking of Possibilities is the name of the page. That's my page where I post all my Mike Dooley stuff. It's a fun page. I post inspirational stuff out there, but there is a link to the sign up. You can also go directly to Speaking of Possibilities, all one word, speakingofpossibilities.com/sign-up, which will take you to the sign up form. I'm only going to take 12 people in the class because I want people to be able to interact, and it's $97, which is quite a bargain compared to what some of my friends charge for it. It's the first time I'm doing it virtually. Great, thanks.
I'm going to make sure I'll put a link below this when we post it, and I'll throw something out as we promote this podcast, so people are aware that it's coming up. Because I love talking to you. I think you have a great way of presenting, and I think if worse comes to worse and the class seems to be falling asleep, all you have to do is pause for a minute and show back up as Molly.
Yeah, Molly's hard to put away when she comes out, though.
I imagine that's the case, but I'm sure it's a good time.
Yeah, definitely.
So Kathleen, this has been amazing. I appreciate all the time, and I know we ran a bit on overtime. I hope I didn't mess with your schedule, but I really adore talking to you and all of your stories, and I wish you nothing but amazing success going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm also available for speaking gigs. If anybody's looking for an inspirational speaker, I can tailor it to your, what you're looking to, the point you're trying to make. But I hope I didn't ramble on, and I hope the people that are watching enjoyed all the stories and had fun watching.
They're going to love it. I promise, because I loved it. So they're going to love it. They don't have a choice. And if they don't love it, the hell with them.
There's always the stop button, right?
Fast forward. You didn't like it? Just move on. Click to the next one.
That's right. There you go.
That's the weirdest ending I've ever had to one of these, and I'm going to leave it anyway.
Okay.
Kathleen, have an awesome day. It was so great talking to you. If anybody is interested in learning more about Kathleen and being inspired by any of the stories she told, please look into the Infinite Possibilities Art of Living Your Dreams seminar, which is on March 6th, this Saturday from 10 to 4. But where the hell are you going anyway? Think about it. 6 hours with Kathleen, not having to wear a mask, not a bad idea. Hope to see you guys there. Kathleen Hoffman, it has been an absolute pleasure clowning around with you for the last hour.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the chance to talk about this stuff. Obviously, I love it.
I love it too, and I'm so glad to talk to you and reconnect again.
Definitely.
All right. Have an awesome day.
You too.